So I recently watched a Stephan video where he talks about his investment in Yotta Bank, which is like a regular bank except that it isn't because they gamify the savings using a lottery component. The whole principle of the bank described by Stephan was really interesting, especially if it actually encourages low-income individuals to invest their money into this bank instead of an actual lottery. But there was one part of Graham's video which was unusual, and that was the claimed annual percent yield. Now, the annual percent yield, if you don't know, is how much money you will make in a year by holding your money in that bank. As an example, if you have $5,000 in a 0.6% APY high yield savings account, you can expect to make $5,000 multiplied by 0.006 or $30 in that year. In his video, Graham referenced some people who managed to work out statistically how much you could expect to make from a Yotta Savings account based on the average expectation of their lottery system. That value came out to 1.62% according to him. And 1.62% is extremely high considering the best APY that I can find right now is around 0.7%. Anyway, I decided to look into it, and turns out that number is not exactly accurate. In his video, he references this article here where they say 1.62% as the average APY. This even agrees with somebody in the comments, a guy who goes by Mark, who claims a 1.66% APY, ignoring the pooled prizes. There's also a link to this spreadsheet showing all of his calculations, except I'm pretty sure they're wrong. And there are a lot of confusing things in this spreadsheet. There are a lot of hard-coded values into this APY calculation. There's no citation of formula or anything that these numbers represent. It's generally just very bad documentation. It even seems to reference cells that aren't actually populated, except I realize they are populated, they're just masked for some reason. And the values in this masked section correspond to the odds provided by Yotta in their official rules document. If you take anything away from this video, just know that the APY that is being claimed in a lot of blogs and even in Stephan's video is likely not accurate. To find out what the actual APY was, I decided to simulate it. And I should say that these simulations are only accurate at the time of the publishing of this video, because there's no rule saying that they won't change those numbers in the future or adjust their prizes. I promise to go through the code parts quickly so as not to bore anyone, but I start by creating a ticket, which is a random set of 7 numbers, one from 71 for the first 6 numbers without replacement, and 1 to 63 for the last number. I then create a function to create an entire vector of all of these tickets. Then there's another function which creates a master ticket, which represents the actual drawing numbers, and then a number of tickets randomly generated to determine what tickets you might have. I then determine the winnings that you would earn from your randomly selected tickets in a weekly drawing. I then have another part of the code which will do multiple weekly drawings depending on how many weeks that you want to go through. I'm also simulating what the winnings would be without any of the pooled prizes as well. This is consistent with the article that Graham linked in his video where they calculated an absolute worst case scenario without winning any of the pooled prizes. In this first case, I ran 1,000 simulations for 200 tickets over the course of 52 weeks. The result was winning an average of $17.67 with a standard deviation of $1.72. And if you calculate what the equivalent APY is for that number of tickets, you get a 0.35% APY. I also ran another simulation, this time for 10,000 loops, but with the same number of tickets and the same number of weeks. This ended up taking an hour and a half to run all of these simulations, and the results were fairly similar, an average of $17.94. This time with a much larger standard deviation, because as you can see from this histogram, 2 people actually won the $1,000 prize out of these 10,000 people. And you can see in 9,998 of the cases, they achieved the same 0.35% APY. But those 2 people who managed to win the $1,000 prize actually got a 20% APY. I then repeated the experiment with 1,000 tickets, found an average of $89.87 with a standard deviation of $4. And if you calculate what the equivalent APY is for that number, well, it's still 0.35%. All of my code is available on GitHub. I'll leave a link in the description to make sure that anybody who wants to play with it will have the opportunity to. And for those people who aren't familiar with Python or coding in general, I did put together a calculator that you can use to calculate the APY under basically similar circumstances. It won't let you adjust any of the prizes that they offer, but it will let you adjust some of the numbers that are used in the drawings. Also, because I didn't want to host a full web application, I used my binder to host the simulation code. It's still pretty easy to use, but there are a couple of steps involved. All you have to do is go to mybinder.org, fill out this form exactly as shown, and click launch. It can take up to several minutes to actually render the calculator, but that's what you get for free products. Now we get to the question of, is it worth it? And the answer is, well, maybe. It entirely depends on the average APY and how it will change in the future relative to other banks. Personally, I only use a high yield savings account for emergency funds, which is 6 months to a year of living expenses. So hypothetically, if I wanted to keep $10,000 in a high yield savings account, the best APY I could find right now is 0.8%, which means over 40 years that $10,000 could turn into $13,771. But if I used Yotta, which is giving me basically a guaranteed 0.55% APY, which is their 0.35% from their lottery system and their 0.2% base APY, then I could turn that $10,000 into $12,460. And while it isn't especially likely that I'd win $1,000 from Yotta even over the course of 40 years, I still consider myself an optimist, and I would rather take the chance on potentially winning a lot of money rather than making up the difference of that $1,300 between the different APYs. And I feel like most people would probably do the same, which is kind of the brilliance behind Yotta and their lottery system. Because most people would rather take the extremely slim chance of winning a lot of money, even if it means they're not getting the absolute best APY that they could. However, if banks started offering APYs of up to 1.8%, which could turn that $10,000 into potentially $22,000 over the course of 40 years, and Yotta did nothing to compensate for this change, I think I might be tempted to switch over to another high-yield savings account. Personally, I'll be using my simulation code to make sure I'm still getting a competitive rate in the future, and I also plan on taking advantage of their referral program to get extra tickets. Also, here's my code if you want to get an extra 100 tickets for yourself. That's it for this video. If you enjoyed the content, make sure you like and leave a subscribe if you want to help me out. Thanks for watching.